Well, good evening. Welcome to San Pedro Valley Baptist Church. Please turn your hymnals to hymn number 163. We're going to be singing this one a cappella. We're going to sing all four verses of Only Trust Him, hymn number 163. On that first. Come every soul by sin oppressed, there's mercy with the Lord, and He will surely give you rest by trusting in His word. Only trust Him, only trust Him, only trust Him now. And He will save you, He will save you, He will save you now. For Jesus shed His precious blood, rich blessings to bestow. Plunge now into the crimson flood that washes white as snow. Only trust Him, only trust Him, only trust Him now. And He will save you, He will save you, He will save you now. On that third. Yes, Jesus is the truth, the way that leads you into rest. Believe in Him without delay, and you are fully blessed. Only trust Him, only trust Him, only trust Him now. And He will save you, He will save you, He will save you now. On the last fourth, come then and join this holy band, and on to glory go, to dwell in that celestial land, where joys immortal flow. Sing it out. Only trust Him, only trust Him, only trust Him now. And He will save you, He will save you, He will save you now.
Well, good evening. Welcome back to church tonight. And we went over all, I don't think I need to remind you of everything we brought up earlier. Just the men's retreat, youth conference, ladies retreat coming up. We'll have more information on that stuff. And tonight we started our ladies choir practice, and I'm excited about that. And that'll be a great blessing to those here in attendance whenever they're able to make it and hear those specials. I'm looking forward to getting more music and more singing, more people involved with those things. It's always a great joy to see God's people getting excited, getting involved, and I do greatly enjoy that. But we'll go ahead and we'll take up our evening offering, and we'll get on with the service tonight. Brother James, would you pray, brother?
Turn to hymn number 161. We're going to sing the first, second, last, fourth verse of hymn number 161, Softly and Tenderly. On that first, softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling for you and for me. Sing it down on that first. Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling for you and for me. See on the portals He's waiting and watching, watching for you and for me. Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, go sinner, come home. Why should we tarry when Jesus is pleading, pleading for you and for me? Why should we linger and heed not His mercies, mercies for you and for me? Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, go sinner, come home. On that last fourth. Oh, for the wonderful love He has promised, promised for you and for me. Though we have sinned, He has mercy and pardon, pardon for you and for me. Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, go sinner, come home.
Alrighty, grab your Bibles and turn to 1 Samuel as we continue on in the life of King David. 1 Samuel chapter number 17 tonight. 1 Samuel chapter number 17. I did want to make mention, I don't remember if I said this earlier, maybe I did already, I don't know. But Brother Ben, he texts me throughout the week, but he makes sure he's been texting me on Sunday morning. He just wishes everybody to have a wonderful week, and he'll be back home hopefully by next Monday, I think. I don't think he'll be here by Sunday, but I think he'll be back in Dudleyville next Monday at some time, so I'll just be praying for him. And it seems to be going okay for him, and we're thankful for the Lord answering prayer and just being with him as he's gone. But he is ready to be back home, and I told him we're ready for him to be back home, so looking forward to that. Now, tonight as we get into 1 Samuel chapter number 17, that I didn't flip to after I told you guys to flip to 1 Samuel chapter 17, I should have done it as well. We're going to be talking about tonight, when we look at the life of David, we, I think, can have a pretty easy understanding that this was a man that was above average. I mean, even as a young man, that's the topic we're going to be talking about tonight, a man that was above average. And really that's what God seeks in the life of a Christian. Now, the worst thing about being average is that most people, they're very comfortable being average. Very comfortable at being average. I mean, there's nothing embarrassing about being average. Just like everybody else for the most part. And the reason people can enjoy being average for the most part is It really doesn't require any initiative. It doesn't require any additional work, or it doesn't require any additional practice. It requires average, just the typical skills that a person already possesses, and they don't need anything more than that. Now, while being average in a sport, or sometimes in a classroom, or in height or weight, those things aren't necessarily a problem. Now, I think we ought to be above average, or try to be in the classroom, and if we do play sports or whatever it is, we ought to try to be better than the average everyday individual. But your height, your weight, there's not a whole lot you can do about being average in those things. Me, for instance, I'm dead center average when it comes to my height, when it comes to my weight. I've never been above average in those things. I've always been just right down the middle average. And, I guess it's never really crossed my mind to try to be above average, because I can't be when it comes to those things. A lot of people today, man, they want to be 6'5" and 6'8", and you got women now that want men above 7 foot, and it's like they ain't going after. I mean, it's just weird to me. It's like that's beyond above average. That's something that somebody can't control necessarily, and it's weird to me that people want to be taller, that people want to be a certain height, or when it comes to weight, obviously those things are going to vary, but. Sometimes being average is just absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with being average. But it is a concern when it comes to Christianity. Well, because God expects and that can be a concern, and it ought to be a huge concern. The end of our lives or our years after we're dead, it's not going to matter how good or bad we were in sport, how average we were in necessarily the occupation we had, or whatever it is, but our eternity will be determined of how great of a Christian we were. Now, David was a man who refused to be average and chose instead, he pushed himself spiritually by refusing to be like everybody else around him, in the average sense. That's why this man, he's clearly a man that is above average. Maybe not necessarily in his height and in his stature and when it comes to being liked or any of those types of things. I mean, matter of fact, he was probably below average if you look at it in that fashion. And we're going to see a lot of people didn't like David. Some people did, some people didn't. His brothers didn't like him. And we're going to get into some of those things tonight. But we're talking about just being an average, not being an average man spiritually or an average woman spiritually tonight. And we're going to see some of those details when it comes to being average, when it comes to that. We're going to have to refuse some things in this life. If you just want to be an average Christian, you can just kind of coast through this life and be an average Christian. And a lot of people do that. But to be above average, it is going to take some effort. We are going to have to refuse some things in this life, and really that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. But look at 1 Samuel chapter number 17. I'm not going to read those first two verses, okay? There's a lot of big words in there. 1 Samuel chapter 17, that's not where the point's going to be anyway. I'm going to begin I can begin in verse 3, and I'm going to read down through verse 7. 1 Samuel chapter 17, the first thing when it came to David being above average in his refusal, David refused to be intimidated by the enemy. David, he didn't care how big he was. Look at verse 3. It says, "And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the other side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them." So you look at the distance between these two armies. And this guy was still huge. In verse 4 it says, "And there went out a champion of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him." I mean, this is a giant of a man. We know some of the stories. We know the story. We know he was 9 to 10 foot tall. His armor, his weapons, they weighed, they were huge. This guy was massive. And David was a young man. But from the description here that we're given of Goliath, we obviously can see that this man was not an average run-of-the-mill soldier. He wasn't just the average 5'10", 160-pound soldier. He was much bigger than that, much larger than that. He was a Canaanite giant. He stood more than 9 feet tall. And Joshua and Caleb, he saw these Canaanite giants years before this. So what was the typical response of the Jews, including Saul and David's own brothers? Well, they were horrified. They were absolutely scared to death when it came to Goliath coming out and yelling and hollering the things that he was. Now, a living Jew could never really think about even defeating this guy. I mean, if you think about that just for a second, who were the Jews? Well, they were God's people. Not a living Jew could ever hope to defeat this giant. Hand-to-hand combat. I mean, that's what Goliath was shooting for here. He was seeking after, and he wanted to take out these Jews one by one, whatever the plan was. He was scaring them to death. The average Jew wanted nothing to do with this man. Matter of fact, the entire army of Israel wanted nothing to do with this man. That you see, straight across the board, everybody there, they didn't stand out. Nobody stood out in the army. Not even King Saul stood out in this army as somebody that's trusting God to take this giant of a man down. The average person could see that he was going to be killed. But David, he was one willing to somewhat think outside the box in this situation. And I tell you right now, this amazed me when I came across this. That's exactly what David did. He thought outside the box when it came to the enemy. And this is huge to me. Goliath was like the bear or the lion that he killed, and he understood. David, he did that. He killed a lion, he killed a bear with his bare hands, and that was hand-to-hand battle. But Goliath, this was a whole different animal. So what was it that helped David in this battle with Goliath, with this massive enemy? The key to winning this battle was he kept his distance. The key to winning the battle with Goliath was that he kept his distance from the enemy. Now, he refused to be intimidated by Goliath. Goliath had the power to snap him like a twig and throw him around like a rag doll. I mean, it wouldn't have took much to take out a young man like David at all. But for some reason, he really wasn't concerned about that. And it was because he thought outside the box. It was that, you know what, all these other soldiers, they were thinking hand-to-hand, sword-to-sword, shield-to-shield combat, and it wasn't going to happen. But somehow David understood that him keeping distance from the enemy was going to be key in this battle. Did he not kill him with a stone from the distance? He didn't go hand to hand. He killed him from the distance. And that's key. Now, and what I mean by this is we know the enemy. We know the enemy. We know the power the enemy has. And we like to get a little close to him. We like to get a little close to the enemy, and we like, it just seems like, for some reason, it's like, and I have a hard time with this, but it's almost like we get comfortable when we get close to the enemy. But we shouldn't. And what I'm saying is this: when we give the flesh what it wants, you know what we do is we comfort ourselves, and we're one step closer to the enemy. We're one step closer to the edge. We like our comforts in this life, even as a Christian, and we know some of the things that the devil's capable of tripping us up with. And yet it's like he casts out that same lure every time. And we know what it looks like. But we like it. Well, I don't know how many times I've caught the same fish over and over and over again. I got sick of catching the same fish over and over again. And it's funny because I can sometimes, depending on the fish and how hard-headed they are, I can sit there and cast in the same fishing hole and just catch the same fish over and over and over again. And it's like he finally eventually gets sick of being caught over and over again. And you would think that the Christian would somewhat have the same mentality. Sometimes you can go back the next day or the next week and you can cast that same lure out and catch the same fish. I fished a lot of ponds, and a lot of times you know what fish they are. You catch, there's a couple 5-pounders in there and a couple 7-pounders in there. And you know somewhat, depending on how much you fish in that same pond, you know the fish that are in there for the most part. We like to get a little close to the enemy, is what I'm saying. We like to comfort the flesh, and we like the things of the world. And when we take a step in those directions, we're just asking for it. God wants His people to be separated for a reason. It doesn't matter if it's music. It doesn't matter if it's the books we read, what we watch on our phones, what we watch on our laptops, or whatever it is. God understands something. God knows when He says to be separated, it is for a reason, because when we don't stay separated, when we don't keep distance from certain things, it's going to bring a Christian to the place that they're going to be out of service for God. We've got to be careful with that. We've got to be careful. Now, David wasn't intimidated by this enemy. And we ought not to be intimidated by the enemy. That's not what I'm saying. We shouldn't be intimidated by the enemy, but don't get too close to the enemy. Because he's strong, he's powerful, and he's very good at what he does, and he'll catch us in a trap. And a lot of times we don't come out of that trap. Look at verses 11. David refused to be intimidated by the enemy. He didn't have to get close to the enemy. He didn't have to warm up to the enemy. He didn't have to taste the blade on the sword. He didn't have to touch the shield. He knew to keep his distance. That's how he was going to defeat him. Don't warm up to the world. Don't warm up to the enemy. Don't give the flesh what it wants. Keep your distance. David, number 2 tonight, refused to be intimidated by his peers. I'm going to read verse 11 and then jump down to verse 24 here. It says, when Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. And then in verse 24 it says, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were sore afraid. All the men of Israel. They didn't like what they saw. They were afraid. Sounds like the average individual. Following, not leading, not being the example. I'm just going to do what everybody else is going to do. And you know what? As long as I follow the crowd, I'm good. You blend in when you're average. That's what they were doing. There wasn't nobody standing out. All the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him. Now, the average person is controlled by these types of circumstances. The average person is controlled by these types of circumstances, and basically all it is peer pressure. It's funny because there's a lot of different types of peer pressure. There's direct peer pressure. There's indirect peer pressure. There's different ways to look at this. And I don't see these men saying, come on, man, let's get out of here. It was just, they just followed each other. I mean, maybe there was people screaming. We don't know the conversations of the soldiers and those types of details. They're not in the Scripture. But it just says all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him. I don't see somebody tripping somebody up and saying, whoa, 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 what are we doing? I don't see that in this passage. They just all ran. The average Christian, or really, let's word it this way, just the average individual. It's made up of people just kind of roam around together, and we just do what everybody else does, and we never take a stand on our own because we're just following the crowd. And that's what it means to basically live in a pack. You're just following, and you're just roaming around with one another. You're not stirring up the pot. You're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. You're just following everybody else. Now, this mentality causes people to want to dress like the world. This mentality causes people to want to switch their music. This kind of mentality causes even preachers to switch Bible versions and to bring these types of things into the church and try to flip the church. Do you understand? A church like ours isn't real popular today. A church that stands on the King James Bible and stands on the right kind of music and does those types of things and has dress standards, and it's not a real popular way to have a church, to be separated from the world. You know, I'm dumbfounded, and I still am, because it's getting worse. Our churches are adopting this contemporary Christian music style more and more and more every week. Well, I know, Pastor, you've said it a million times. I'm sick of hearing you say it. Say something else. Well, it's a problem. And I'm going to make myself very clear, we will not go in that direction. Amen. We're not going to have rock and roll up on the platform. I mean, God says to stay separated. He wants His people to be different, to be set apart. And contemporary Christian music is the exact opposite of what it means to be separated from the world. It's just bringing the world into the church. And people aren't seeing it. It's a problem. But by many doing this, many have become casualty by either indirect peer pressure or direct peer pressure, or whatever it is, however you want to word it. Many preachers are seeing other preachers doing this, and many churches are seeing other churches doing this. And the problem of it is somebody's doing it outside the church house, so they're bringing it in the church house. And let me just say this. I know, look, we have certain standards for certain things. I wear a suit to church. And I'm the pastor. I think a preacher ought to wear a suit. A lot of preachers out there ain't wearing suits no more. Wearing a t-shirt and a pair of jeans, just so they make visitors feel more welcome. I mean, it almost sounds good. You know what I mean? You know, I was asked the other day, hey, what kind of dress code do you have to come into your church, just to sit in the service? I said, just wear clothes. As long as you're wearing clothes, come on in. But many have turned away from, for so long, what churches have done. And what they're doing is they're giving in to the pressures of what everybody else is doing in this life. They're not going to go to hell for it. But it just seems like the reverence for God and the reverence for God's house and being around His people and coming to hear the Word of God and those types of things, it's being stripped away out of our churches. And it's not because of the people in the pews, it's because of the leadership behind the pulpit. It's the leadership behind the pulpit doing this stuff. You know, I've racked my brain about this. I'm thinking, man, people will follow their pastor. Just lead them. They may not 100% agree with you on everything. I've never met one person that agrees 100% on everything. But here's the deal. When it comes to certain things, I'm thinking, dude, if you would just keep the right kind of music in your church, that's what you would have in the church. I mean, are you not the pastor of the church? The Bible version? Well, I just don't want to stir the pot. I mean, them people don't need to be in leadership positions. I mean, it drives me insane. We got a bunch of, well, very poor leaders in a lot of churches today. Very poor. They like to stand on nothing. I mean, they'll throw the Word of God out just so they don't offend somebody. They're giving in to peer pressure. Well, so-and-so over here has been doing it, and you know what? It works out for him. So I'm going to start doing it. I mean, you start to see the tide disappear. I mean, there's multiple things that you can look at and just see a church going downhill. It just blows my mind. But what's taking place is they're being intimidated by the peers, by other preachers. Now, the average response when David approached this giant without the armor, without the sword, remember all these people, they ran. All the men of Israel ran. But the average response of these people were, you're an idiot. I mean, David, you're crazy to go out there and to go into head-to-head battle with this man. That would be the average response, and it was. I mean, Saul already tried to help this man, equip him with the average protection, because that's what they had, armor and the helmet and the shield and the sword and those types of things. But David had refused the typical, the average armor. And I find it very interesting. The guy's crazy would have been the typical response. To somebody intimidated by his peers, he would have gave in to some kind of pressure, and he would have ended up going out there. And you know what? He may not have been able to move the way he did and sling that rock around and stick him right in the forehead like he did. It may not have worked. But the average individual, they would have taken this average protection and went into battle because of the peer pressure of these other soldiers. You got to think, that's how they've been fighting for years. That's what the king had on him. This supposedly been proven to them, to the average individual, to the average soldier, this was what you did. And you got to understand, there would have been pressure, more than what you think, by this. And again, when we think about protection, in the life of a Christian, the average protection that an average Christian today, they're good with just going to church 1 or 2 times a week, setting their Bibles down and leaving it in the car to heat up and to sit there and warp, or setting their Bible on the nightstand and just let it collect dust and with the Arizona dust of the desert for the week. That's the average Christian today. They think they're okay with just coming to church once or twice a week, and then they look upon Christians like you and I. I mean, you went to church 3 times in one day, and then you show up you go to church on Wednesdays too, and then you go back to church and you pray, and don't you get sick of seeing the same people? How can you do that? How can you show up on soul winning times on top of going to these services? And to the average Christian, they're good with 1 or 2 days a week or 1 or 2 services a week. But to those that truly know what they need when it comes to protection, they're not going to let their peers make them think they're extreme in their Christianity. Do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm saying is these people, they ran away. They didn't want to take on old Goliath. To them, David was an extreme. But he wasn't intimidated by all the men of Israel. And we're going to get to the passage here in just a moment, but I want you to think about this. Just because everybody else is doing it, and just because everybody else, you see them running in fear, and just because everybody else is doing this or saying that or whatever it may be, we don't have to give in to the pressures of what everybody else is doing. Look, if somebody's accusing you of, you go to church too much, and you do this too much as a Christian, and why don't you just cuss every once in a while? Well, you'd be surprised. The average Christian would give in to that peer pressure. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't need that. He wasn't intimidated by his peers. Look at verse 15. From Saul, and notice this, to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. David had already become noticed by the king. We talked about David's testimony, and what a powerful testimony David has already. He went and played for Saul, and then he returned to the sheep. It would have been very easy for him to get big-headed. I'm known for my music capabilities. I'm known for that. Matter of fact, I'm so good, I'm playing for the king now. David could have easily been filled with pride, and his head could have swelled up to the place of almost popping. But you know what he didn't do? He didn't do that. It didn't affect him in that manner. Matter of fact, he just went right back to attending the sheep. We don't see that he complained. We don't see that he murmured. We don't see that he grumbled about it. He went from one thing, doing something in a wonderful place, clean, beautiful music, to going right back out to the field to attend the sheep. That's a great attitude to have, because it's the opposite of pride. If he would have been filled with pride, do you understand? He would have been like, I ain't doing that. Do you not know who I am? I'm too good for that job now. That's what pride will do. That's what our reaction will do, or will be due to pride. If that's what comes into our lives, we're going to be too too good to do something. And a lot of Christians have this problem. A lot of people have this problem. A lot of pastors have this problem. As they become filled with pride because they think they have accomplished something. I mean, when we become accomplished, we're pretty proud of the things that we've done in this life, the things that we've done in this life, and that's the problem. Because it's what we've done in this life. Now, David was special. He was on fast track. If you think about it, I mean, he was cruising along in life, and man, he was anointed, and he had everything going for him. He was marked for success. So how does the average person handle success? Well, he allows it to create a spirit of pride. And in his early success, usually, it often will have a tendency to ruin him. You know, I was young once. And I remember when I was younger and working with a bunch of young guys, it's quite funny to really think about it and to kind of just look back in the rearview mirror a little bit, and that's how a lot of people are early on in life, isn't it? We want to accomplish things. We start going into a direction, and man, we're just knocking some things out. We're on fast track, man. We're going to be, millionaires before you know it. We're going to be supervisor. We're going to be running the show. We're going to be doing this, or we're going to be doing that. But I've come to find out we can have all those things. And we can let pride drive us in that direction. But it'll ruin some people. It can ruin them. It'll ruin them, and along with, while they're chasing this pride dream, it'll ruin a lot of other people along with them. They'll step on anybody and everybody they can to reach the top. That's what pride, if it creeps into our lives, can easily do when it comes to being successful. But I think we need to understand something. David was different than this. He refused to be ruined by this disease of pride. It's not really a disease. I think sometimes we can get caught up in that. It's a sin. Sin's not a disease, it's sin. Pride is a sin, and we have to get it out of our lives because it can ruin somebody, and it will if we allow it to linger on and linger on and linger on. We must come to this place that we are not puffed up with pride, but we are humble before Almighty God, no matter what it is that comes along in this life. You understand that, and it's kind of funny when you think about it. I mean, Pastor, how can somebody just become prideful when it comes to their success? Well, it's pretty simple. It's because they think they're the ones that done it. They think everything that is a success in their life, they think, you know what, this was at my hand. I did this. I worked hard to get here. It was my ability that got me to this place in life. But I'm afraid you're mistaken, friend. Anything you've ever been successful for in your life wasn't by your hand. God allowed you to be successful is what I'm getting at. Any success that King David ever had in his life, it wasn't because of him. It was because of God. It was because of the power of God in his life. And you know why he had that kind of power in his life? Because he wasn't just the run-of-the-mill, everyday individual. he desired to see God working so much in his life. He wanted to be successful, to bring glory to God, not to himself. Now, David refused to become proud of his accomplishments, and that's a huge deal, and we have to get to that place in this life. If we want to stay humble, as we should, look, you didn't accomplish anything. It was only by the hand of God. That's what we must wake up every single day. Anything, Lord, that I accomplish today is only by your hand allowing me to do this. And we got to remind ourselves of that. Pastors, Christians, whatever it is, we can easily be filled with pride. Look at verse 28 and 29. A fourth thing this evening when it comes to David not being average. He refused to become discouraged by family. He refused to let his family discourage him. A mature Christian will know what to do in situations. A babe in Christ, they're going to fight, they're going to struggle with this. These types of things won't be an issue in our life. That's an above the average type of person. That's an above the average kind of Christian. Hey, I'm going to listen to God, not you. I mean, that's somebody that's up here in their Christianity. But the average everyday Christian, you know what? Family's going to come along and they're going to say something and they're going to do something, and you know what? They're just going to be discouraged about it. You have to come to this place. Don't let family discourage you when it comes to living for God. The devil will use anybody and anybody he can get a hold of. Look at verses 28 and 29. 1 Samuel chapter number 17. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I like how he tries to cut him even more. Did you see that? Why'd you come down here? And matter of fact, why'd you leave those few sheep? I know you ain't doing much anyway. Why are you down here? You're supposed to go take care of those few sheep that Father had you take care of. He likes to cut him here. Why camest down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the haughtiness or the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down, and thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? What have I now done? Is there not a cause? I mean, why are you attacking me, David's saying. I mean, look at you guys. Nobody's up here doing anything. You're scared to death. You're running away. You're not trusting in the God of the Bible. You're not trusting in the God of Jacob. You're up here acting like a bunch of sissies. What do you mean? Is there not a cause for somebody to be here that wants to actually do something for God? Encourage David here from doing anything. This is one of the quickest ways that new Christians get discouraged. I've already seen it. I'm already hearing it. I mean, isn't it sad when, whenever I lead somebody to the Lord, I try to remember I'm excited, and sometimes I feel like I'm more excited than somebody that just got saved, and maybe that's not the case. It just, I get excited whenever I'm able to lead somebody to the Lord. And I often try to remember to do this. I often try to remember, look, you're going to go tell somebody, you're going to be excited about it, but they are probably not going to be excited about it. I just saw that. yesterday. And that's something that I forgot. It's been a little while since I was able to lead somebody to the Lord. And I forgot to mention that. And it's like, I just got saved and this, and there's excitement, and then the people are like, huh? What are you talking about? And I thought, oh no, I hope this isn't one of those moments of discouragement. And I'm glad it wasn't. But there was some confusion that took place. And when those things happen, often the person that just recently gets saved, they're going to be like, why ain't everybody else excited like I am? Why isn't anybody else excited about this? And the devil's going to come along, and he's going to start working in their heart and in their mind, and especially to somebody that's lost, they ain't going to care. Sometimes the devil will use people that way. But even somebody that's been saved for a while, some of the same things can happen. When I started really trying to follow the Lord, and I really tried to live for God early on in my Christianity, I didn't have a whole lot of Christian friends, and I was still kind of back and forth. I still had my worldly friends, and not that I was still doing the things but I still had close ties to those worldly friends. And you know what? I come to find out that, man, one of the biggest discouragements was in the life of a young Christian trying to move in the right direction was because I didn't have a whole lot of friends, right friends anyway. I would get excited about things, and I couldn't share that. Maybe you don't understand what I'm talking about, but I've come to this place in my life that, you know what? There's not a lot of my family members that have a clue what it means to be joyful in the Lord. I can't call somebody up sometimes and be excited about somebody just getting saved. There's not very many people that I can share that with. And I tell you right now, I'm thankful that I have a church family. I can get excited about that stuff, and I can tell Chris, hey, text these ladies, I already have, and, text somebody else, and, I get excited, and I got preacher friends now that I can say, hey, we just saw some people saved, and, they come to church, and, Lord's working, and He's answering prayer, and, those types of things, but a lot of times people, they don't understand that. But this case here, I mean, you think about David, he knows God. He has a relationship with God. And you would think that Eliab and, Jesse, did they raise them to trust God? Or, how was their house exactly? It seemed like it was somewhat out of order. And like I mentioned already, there wasn't a mother. And, a mother's not mentioned in the life of David. And David, ruddy David, just stay out there, man. You're not important enough to come in and, see Samuel. You're not important enough to see one of your brothers be anointed with oil, or they assumed that it was going to be his brother. But we understand there's something amiss in the household. And it's like, you would think that, you know what, David coming along and getting fired up about this giant of a man, this enemy, the Philistines. Hey, why ain't anybody doing anything around here? And they don't get fired up about it. You don't see anybody else. You don't see any of the other soldiers. You don't see any other just average run-of-the-mill soldier saying, you know what, David, you're right. Why ain't anybody getting fired up? You don't see that. All you see is discouragement coming about. All you see is water really trying to be dumped out on the fire that's burning in David, and it's causing him to be angry as they're not a cause. It's sad when we have family that would do this. But the reality of it is there are people in our lives that will do this. They don't understand. They don't care. They'll accuse you of different things. And you know, if you share something with it's going to be somewhat of a discouragement. But guys, we have a church family. Hey, whenever God starts working in your life, whenever God answers prayer in your life, you know what you can do? You can text somebody at this church. And you know what? When you let somebody know that God's working in your life and those types of things, you can get excited about it. And you know what? When you get excited about it, you can get somebody else excited about it too. We're not in this situation completely like David is. And I'll be honest with you, it amazes me, this young man, he didn't care. He just said, you know what, I'm just going to trust God and I'm going to keep on trucking along. I don't care what you say, and I don't care what you say, and I don't care what you're doing. I'm going to do what's right here. I'm going to stand on my faith in God. See, he refused to become discouraged by his family. And that's something we must learn to do in this life, discouraged by friends. It can be brothers, it can be sisters, it can be spouses, or whatever. I mean, the devil's good at using somebody in our lives, very close to us. Was this not his brother? What, did the devil not bring Job's wife along and try to discourage Job even more than... I mean, guys, that's the enemy. Don't be discouraged when things like that come about. I know it's difficult not to be sometimes, but there's things you have a church family you can be sharing those things with. You can get excited about. When it comes to new converts, I hope you continue to pray for them. Because I can tell you right now is prime time for the devil to come along and start discouraging and start putting thoughts in their mind, bringing family into their lives, trying to be a discouragement to them. David refused to be disturbed by his critics. Look at verse 31 through 33. Yeah, his brothers, definitely, they were critics. They were accusing him. Look at verse 31 through 33. It says, "And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David," this is where the criticism comes in, "Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." I mean, if you think about who the critic is right now, this wasn't his brother just running his mouth. This wasn't his oldest brother. This wasn't his middle brother. This wasn't his younger. This wasn't somebody just a normal, everyday person. This was the king himself. I mean, this was King Saul saying, "Hey, David, it ain't going to work out for you, buddy." I mean, this man, he's been fighting, he's been trained from a young boy, from a youth. He's a full-grown man, he's a giant. And that's all you are as a youth. You're nobody. You ain't going to win, man. It ain't going to happen. And if you go out there, better kiss Daddy goodbye. It ain't going to work out good for you. Thou art but a youth. Thou art not able. Now, the average person, they tend to get into a rut of how they think and live. And I hate to say this, and I know I mentioned this is King Saul telling David this. I mean, in stature and society, He's not just the average peasant walking down the old brick road. I mean, he's king. But he doesn't have much faith in God. Do you see King Saul going out there? Do you see King Saul rallying up the troops? Do you see King Saul kneeling before God or building an altar? And you know what? We need to do something. We need God's help. Hey, just because he's king, yeah, he may have a high stature. He may be looked up to. He may be wearing a crown. He may have special armor and those things. He may have a special sword and a special carriage and whatever else he has. But I'm going to tell you something. When it comes to being average, this man's just like every other man spiritually. He's just like everybody else. He shouldn't be, though. And he wasn't at one time, but he is now. It's like he's in this rut, and he's thinking just like everybody else. It ain't going to happen, David. I mean, this guy, look at him. He's thinking just like all the other soldiers. I mean, this man was commander-in-chief. God put him in this position to lead the armies of Israel and to be king over the nation of God's chosen people. He ought to be something kind of like King David. But he's not. He's just everyday, run-of-the-mill, average, spiritually, just like all the others. He looked out by sight and it caught his attention. He wasn't walking by faith. Guys, if you want to be an average Christian, here's what you're going to do. You're going to look at life's circumstances. And you're going to let the circumstances that you can see with your two eyes run your life. The majority of Christians live their life that way. The above average Christian, they're going to look out and they're going to see circumstances and they're going to see people, they're going to see casualty after casualty, and what they're going to do is they're going to come to this place. They're not going to walk by sight, they're going to walk by faith. If you want to be an above average Christian, kind of like David, if you want to be somebody that God uses, you cannot let circumstances run your life. You cannot let what you see in this life right before you guide you and direct you. I'm not talking about being foolish. I'm talking about, guys, we got to have faith. I know, hey, that's a simple, basic truth tonight. I get it. That's what King David was doing. He was walking by faith. I mean, guys, he wasn't walking by sight. If he was walking by sight, he'd be just like every other average soldier running from Goliath. You know, I think about a lot of stuff in my life before I do it, and I think we ought to consider it. I really do. But I tell you what, sometimes there comes to a place in our life where, you know what? It's just a lack of faith. It's the everyday average Christian. There ain't very many Christians out there walking by faith. They're walking and they're running their lives by what they can see in this life. Look at verse 38 and 40. David refused to abandon proven success. You know, before I read this, let me ask you something. How many times does it take, how many times is it going to take for us to see God work? and us come to another problem in life and start flopping around like a fish out of water because we're scared to death that we're not going to make it. How many answers of prayer have you had in your life? How many times has God not come through in your life? Guys, I've had a lot of unanswered prayers in my life. But I can tell you this, I'm still alive. There's moments where there's things that I want, and you know what? I don't get them. Well, guys, that's not something to throw in the towel in when it comes to having faith in God. Just because you didn't get what you want, and I think that's just the everyday average Christian is, you know what? If they don't get what they want, you know what they're going to do? They're going to throw in the towel. Have you ever come to this place in your Christian life where you know, without a shadow of a doubt, that when you put your trust in this book, it's going to happen? Have you ever prayed to God and truly believed that God will answer this prayer according to His will? I mean, have you ever come to the place where, what I'm saying is, have you ever come to this place where you've truly trusted God through a trial and a tribulation in your life, and you know what happened? Everything's just fine. It all worked out. It may not have worked out in every detail that you thought it would have, but it all worked out. That's what we're kind of going to see here. Proven success, I think, is something, look, it needs to be something in our life that we've come to. This Bible ought to be a proven success in your life. Your faith in God ought to be, you ought to be at a certain place in your Christianity, in your walk with God, that it's a proven success. Your faith in God, trusting God, is going to help you to the other side, whatever it is. And that's what we see. Look at this. David refused to abandon proven success. He wasn't going to trade it in for something else. He knew what God was capable of doing. Look at verse 38 through 40. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him, and he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in the shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistines. Now, you understand, in David's situation here, as a young man, not a soldier from his youth, he could have easily took ear to the critics, to these professionals, and listened to them. It's not going to happen, David. I mean, I'm sorry, buddy. I understand. Hoorah. It just isn't going to work. Well, as they continued on through the process, hey, they must have changed their mind. Because now they're putting Saul's armor on. I mean, you know what we just read. We've read it 150 million times probably. And he's saying to them, I've not proved this stuff. I don't know that it's going to work. Matter of fact, I don't think it's going to work. Well, sure it is, David. I mean, we've been wearing this kind of armor for 1,000 years. Maybe 100 years, 50 years, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know how long they had this certain design for their armor and those type of things. But hey, David, we know. We know that it's going to work. We understand. Now, what you're saying about you're actually going to kill Goliath, probably not going to happen. But we understand this armor. Well, obviously, David didn't listen to that. And he wasn't going to try something that was not already proven as a success. You understand what I'm saying? He said, you know what, I'm not going to try that. You know what, that's your deal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that has proved me success already in this life, and I'm going to trust the God of the Bible. I'm going to trust the God of Jacob, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to beat this Philistine because my faith is in God. Now, the world tries to offer many solutions, even to the life of a Christian, don't they? I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard it. I've seen it. I've heard horror stories. People come in and they have issues in their life, and Pastor, what should I do about these certain things? Pastor, I'm struggling in my marriage, or I'm struggling financially, or whatever it is. And often, here's what the world will give as an answer to somebody struggling financially. Stop trusting God with your tithe and just pay what you got to pay. Stop trusting God, and you know what? You just need to take that money and you need to just put it where it needs to go over here because you owe them people money. Or whatever it is. I mean, financial advisors will give that kind of advice. I've heard Christians give that kind of advice. I mean, guys, we read earlier in the book of Malachi, these priests, they were stealing God. They were stealing from God with tithes and offerings. Well, that was the priests. I'm not a priest. I think it can still be applied to the life of a Christian today. I mean, we see it clear throughout the Bible, guys, when it comes to our giving. But if we go to the world, and this is a simple truth tonight, I understand that, but when it comes to marriages, I mean, guys, I've heard this ridiculous advice given to people, and it's this here. You know what, if you're having marriage trouble, you need to go on a vacation by yourself, and you need to go on a vacation by yourself and just separate for a while. I know Christians and know of Christians that they used to take separate vacations every year because they needed the space. I mean, do they hate their spouse that bad? Or they don't want to go on vacation with them? Well, there's moments where I leave and I travel and I have to leave my family behind. I'm not going on vacation, and I'm not leaving my wife behind to get space from her and those types of things. It ought not to be like that, but you go to the world for advice, and you know what they're going to do? Here's something else stupid given from worldly advice when it comes to marriages. You know what, why don't you, if you're not happy, why not have an open marriage? It's foolishness, guys, when it comes to that. But I'm going to tell you something. The world's devices are not proven success in the life of Christians. The world's devices are not proven success in the life of Christians. But I'm going to tell you something. In the life of a Christian, here's what's been proven. And it's simple. And we don't have to complicate things. Well, Pastor, what happens when I start getting in a pinch and when my marriage starts to trouble and my relationship starts to crumble and those types of things? You know what he says? He says, keep it simple. And he says, do what you're supposed to do. Trust me. That's it. Just keep on trusting me. There's no reason to complicate things. You know what you're supposed to do as a Christian? No matter what the situation is in this life, you keep on trusting God. That's all there is. Hey, if you're not sure of the next step, if you're going through a trial and a trip, just trust God. I mean, that's how simple the Christian life is. Well, Pastor, that's not that simple. No, it really is, but we complicate things. Because when we don't get things our way, that's when we decide to complicate things. Look at verse 44 and 48, and this is the last thing tonight. This is what David refused to do. David refused to complicate things. I kind of went into that already. David refused to complicate things. If you want to be an above-average Christian, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Don't complicate life. It's really not that complicated. But it does get complicated when we want things our way and it's not going our way. Things get very complicated. Just keep it simple. Verse 44 through 48, and the Philistines said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts. The God of the enemies, or the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. I tell you right now, just reading that passage fires me up. We're going to keep reading, but is that not something as you read that? I mean, he's standing face to face with a giant enemy, and he's not backing down 1 inch. He's not backing away 1 inch. And he's reminding him, hey, I serve the God of this Bible. He's going to be the one. I don't serve your God. I'm not doing what you're doing. I'm not believing what you're believing in. I'm believing in the God, the one true God, the God of creation. And it's going to be him. And because I'm fighting and he's with me, you're going to be the one. I'm going to take your head, matter of fact. As a matter of fact, you said I was going to be fed to the fowls of the air. You're going to be the one. He's helping him out here. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword, or not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. Now, here's the thing about Goliath. Goliath was not a victim of Zionism. You hear a lot about that junk today. But Goliath, he wasn't a victim of Zionism. He wasn't a victim of Israel's attempt to dominate the area or the land. He was not a victim of some educational system. Too many children in one classroom. He didn't get let down by the teacher. His problem wasn't that he was bullied. He didn't get bullied. The reason for this this battle, this contest between David and Goliath, is simply this. It's good versus evil. It's God versus Satan. And the world loves to complicate things because people, they're then forced to be dependent upon those who have complicated things. But God, on the other hand, here's what He would prefer in our lives. It's to keep things simple, to keep things uncomplicated. While the world loves to complicate life, here's what the Bible tries to do. It tries to help simplify, and it simply tells us, here's what you do. Here's who created the world. It was created for His purpose. And what you need to do? You need to believe what the Bible says. You need to get saved. You need to walk by faith. And it doesn't matter what situation comes your way in this life. Keep it simple. Don't complicate things. And just trust God with the outcome. Let's bow for a word of prayer. Father, thank you for David, and Lord, what a fiery passage. Lord, I know there's much more in